How's it going, everybody? This is Raine from Initiative Tabletop. Today we're looking at a game called Pandemic. Now, back in 2008, a company called Z-Man Games released this. This is the original Pandemic. It's a game where you and your friends play as important roles such as the medic, the researcher, and so on to stop 4 different viruses from outbreaking and taking over the world. Now, while this is a great game, this isn't the one we're looking at. Earlier this year, Z-Man Games actually re-released Pandemic, and this is what we got. It's a brand new take on the game. The rules are actually the same. You get 2 new roles. The board is updated. All of the components are different. They look great. Everything is awesome about this version of the game. So we decided we wanted to not only show you what it looks like, but show you how it plays. Whether you're a fan of the old Pandemic or looking into getting into Pandemic for the first time, this is a perfect choice. So, without keeping you waiting, let's see how we're going to protect the world from these viruses. Alright, so here you have a basic setup to start a game of Pandemic. You've got disease cubes, which each of these cubes represents a disease on the board. You've got the infect deck, which is how you infect cities. The player deck, which offers cards for players to use. Your markers for the different viruses. Outbreak marker. The infection rate marker. Your research facility. And player pawns. In the beginning of the game, players will select different roles. These roles are selected at random, but for the purpose of the video, let's just say these were chosen. You've got the medic, the scientist, and one of the new roles, the quarantine specialist. These roles allow you to do different things on your turn. Now, each one of them has a special ability, and by using these special abilities, players can work together to help eradicate these viruses from the board, because in Pandemic, that's what you need to do in order to win the game. Either you're going to eradicate these viruses or they're going to eradicate you. Now that we've taken a look at the roles, let's look at one of the most dangerous cards in the game, the Epidemic card. Depending on the difficulty at which you want to play the game, these cards will come in different numbers when you put them in the player deck. Most games start with just 4 of them for if you're looking for a pickup game or if you're looking to teach someone Pandemic or just to have a standard game. You're going to shuffle 4 of these into the player deck, but it's not like normal shuffling. The way it works is that you will split the player deck into 4 different piles. The deck will then take 1 card per epidemic and place it in a pile. Those piles will get shuffled, then they get put back together as the player deck. Now that you've got that taken care of and that set up for the game, let's look at some of the other things that you're going to need to do in order to get the game set up. Whenever you're starting the game, you have to start with infected cities. The way this happens is you reveal 3 cards from the top of the infect deck, and whichever cities and colors are listed, you're going to place 3 cubes of that color in the city. So for instance, let's look at Santiago. It was the first one that we flipped. So you're going to take 3 cubes, place them in Santiago. 3 cubes is the most that any city can hold at any time, and that's very important to remember. After you've infected that city, you'll follow up with the next city, and then you'll go to the next one. Let's take a look at Madrid. Let me move the cards here. These cards go to the discard pile, and then you'll do it again. The top 3 will be flipped, but this time you're only going to put 2 cubes of that color in the city. After that's finished, you'll repeat the process one last time, and you'll place 1 cube of that color in that city. After that's finished, you'll have your starting infected cities, and you'll be ready to start the game. Alright, now that we've taken a look at a little bit of how to set up things, now let's look at player actions. This is where the heat of the game comes in. On your turn, you can do these things that are listed on the board. And those are do 4 actions, draw 2 cards, resolve any epidemics, discard to 7 cards, and infect cities. Each player has a reference card that will help them remember what they can do on their turn. Most of the time, you're going to be moving around because you need to get to the cities that are infected in order to help them. You can move in a number of different ways. You can drive or ferry, which means I'm going to go from this location to this location. It's moving from one city to an adjacent city anywhere on the board as long as they're connected. The next one is a direct flight. Sometimes player cards, well, most of the time, they will have cities on them. For instance, this one is Lima. If a player is holding the Lima card, they can discard that card to fly directly to that location. So let me find Lima real quick. Boom. And you can immediately go to that city. Another way to travel is charter a flight. You can discard the card of the city that matches the current city you're in to fly anywhere on the board. That's really important to remember whenever you need to get to the other side of the board. And then lastly, it's a shuttle flight. You can go from any place that has a research station in it to any other place on the board that has a research station in it for 1 action. Those come in handy whenever you have more research stations on the board, which you will definitely need more of. Now that we've covered some movement, let's look at the other actions that you can do on your turn. Some of the other actions you can do are build a research station, treat disease, share knowledge, and discover a cure. Each one of these is very important, so let's take a look at them. Whenever you're in a city and you're holding a card that has that city on it, you can build one of these, which is a research station. These research stations allow you to shuttle flights and discover cures. They come in handy. Another action is treat a disease. For 1 action, you can remove 1 cube of a disease from a city that you're in. Share knowledge. If you're in the same city as another player and you have that city's card, for 1 action you may give them that card. This usually comes into play whenever you have a scientist, because a scientist is mostly useful in treating diseases. Discover a cure. At any time that you are in a city with a research station and you have 5 cards of the same color, you may discard all 5 of those cards to cure a disease. When you cure a disease, you'll put the marker on the disease that's cured. This is really good because whenever you discover a cure, anyone who uses the treat disease action removes all cubes of that color instead of just 1 for 1 action. Now, if you move across the board and you clear out all cubes of 1 disease's color, you may then put the token like so. What that means is this disease has been eradicated. Whenever a card comes up of that color from the infect deck, those cities are not infected because the disease has been eradicated. And these go away. Okay, so some other things we want to look at are the infection rate track and the outbreak marker. These are very important places on the board because when these move, things get bad. The infection rate means that it's on a 2 right now. That means on a player's turn, at the very end, they must infect cities. The rate at which the infection marker is at means that's how many cities they flip and infect on their turn. On a player's turn, they only add 1 cube to each city they flip. But as the infection rate marker increases, they flip more cities per turn. How does the infection rate marker increase? Well, simple. By getting epidemics. You don't want to get them. but they're inevitable. Now let's look at the outbreak marker and the outbreak track. Whenever you infect a city that already has 3 cubes in it, it can't have any more cubes of that color. So what happens is you have an outbreak. Let's say I try to infect Madrid. It's already got 3 cubes in it. We would move the outbreak marker down 1. And for every cube we are supposed to put in Madrid, we put that many cubes in a city directly adjacent to it. So, 1 would go to London, 1 would go to Paris, 1 would go to New York, which is a problem, because that means we would move the outbreak marker again, and it would spill over from New York. So you can see how things can get out of hand rather quick. But the good thing is you guys are all specialists. You're great in your field and you know what you're doing. So, through the use of clever tactics, strategy, and knowing how to use your card's special ability, you'll be able to work together as a team to help eradicate all of these diseases and keep the world safe to live another day. Alright, so there you have it. I love Pandemic. I can't get enough of it. Even though I've got the brand new one, I still play the old one. I love the new board. I love the artwork. It's much more realistic. And the best thing about this, the pawns match the rolls. If you've ever played the old Pandemic, you know how crazy it is trying to match the colors of the pawns with the colors of the rolls. Z-Man got it right this time around whenever they went ahead and made the right colors for the right rolls. I can't stress this enough. That is my favorite thing about this brand new version. No more confusion. The new rolls are a lot of fun to play. I do feel like they're kind of a little underpowered when compared to the other rolls that we had in the beginning. But, I mean, the new artwork is great. It's definitely worth the $40 that it's advertised for, and you'll probably find it around that price around your different local game stores. But I promise you it's well worth it. If you're looking for a game that's cooperative, that you can play with your friends, a game that you can get out to the table and then get up within 45 minutes to an hour, this is a perfect solution for you. If you have not played Pandemic, I urge you to check it out. And you know what? It's got my vote. So, thanks for checking in, and we'll see you next time right here on Initiative Tabletop.